Tonight's show is brought to you by the beast that lives under your bed, in your closet, in your head. Bendetti Optics, and you, our listeners. Like, Martha, get the spotlight. Let's mess with some people. What is up, all of you wayward, spooky souls? And welcome back to the Wayward Stories podcast. Wayward Stories is the podcast where we tell the tales of our adventures and our wanderings and our wonderings. How is everyone doing tonight? Are you in the mood for a little spooky season treat? This episode will be dropping on the eve of Halloween, or Samhain, as some might call it. There's a lot going on right now, guys. This is going to be a fun episode tonight. Just a quick check-in on how my Ozark Mountain folk magic presentation went at the Museum of History. It was a smashing success. Sold the place out. 125 seats capacity. Literally turned people away at the door. They said at least 30 people turned away at the door, which is unfortunate, and I hate that. But fire marshals can be kind of jerks about things because they want to keep us safe and other lame stuff like that. So that was what it was. But apparently it went really well. I was told that it went really well. I kind of just blacked out for the whole thing, probably under the absolute terror of how many people were staring at me, expecting me to sound smart for an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, that was fun. But anyway, it went really, really well. Another check-in, I did hear from Champ yesterday morning about my guesting on his show, the Wild and Woolly Ozarks podcast, and he said they had started editing it. So there's still a chance that it might actually become a podcast. I say that only half jokingly because we waxed philosophical for 2.5 hours, and who knows if we ever actually brought it home. But that was a fun interview I did with him. And if it does drop, you guys will be seeing it pop up in the feed here. It may have popped up before this one because I am going to share it on our platform as well. So you guys will be able to check that out. This morning, now I'm recording before Halloween. Obviously, this morning I actually drove up the hill to Fayetteville and I recorded with the Ozarks at Large podcast and radio show on Arkansas's, basically our public broadcasting system here. Spent an hour talking to Jack Travis and their station intern Grace, and did a much more in-depth interview with them about the Ozark Mountain folk magic. And so that's something that's going to be coming out. They said it should drop on Halloween. They may do it in 2 parts actually, because you guys know me, I talk a lot. So I don't know why all this cool stuff is happening all at once, but it is. And so we're just kind of trying to survive, roll with the punches, get all the things done that have to get done. And it's really fun, exciting stuff. This is a fascinating course of study, apparently, that a lot more people are interested in than I actually expected to be. So, with that said, tonight's show, we are going to do our 2025 installment for spooky season. Any of you who have been around for a moment know this is not a paranormal podcast show, as much as I would love to do one. But I get to, because it's my show, every time we come around to Halloween, I am allowed to humor myself by turning it into a paranormal, quote, end quote, podcast for at least an episode, because nobody can take me off the air, because that's the beauty of independent podcasting. So here we are. Tonight, we are going to be talking about haunts, or haunts, as some might say, here in Arkansas, and they may even extend a little bit further out, because Arkansas, as you know, is home to a large portion of the Ozark Mountains where a lot of our hauntings exist, but those Ozark Mountains are also shared by a good portion of Missouri. There may be more Ozarks in Missouri than there are in Arkansas. I don't know the percentages, and also eastern Oklahoma. So we're going to talk about haunts primarily in Arkansas tonight, because to stay on brand with our show, I like to get you guys off your butts, get you out exploring, get you traveling, get you living this life, get more More prescient tonight than ever, right? Get busy living or get busy dying. So let's help you guys get busy living. And, that way someday when you are getting busy dying, you'll be like, you know what, at least I've got some good stories. And maybe you'll have some good ideas for who you want to haunt and how you want to haunt in the afterlife. I'm already making plans. I'm not looking forward to dying, but I'm going to have so much fun after I'm dead. Like any of you guys that survive me, like I will be watching you sleep from the corner of your bedroom. Just keep that in mind. That's actually kind of creepy in a different way, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. We may need to workshop that. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about haunts in the Ozarks. All right. We're going to start out tonight and we're going to do some cryptids. Any of you guys know anything about cryptids? Bigfoot. Everyone knows who Bigfoot is. Bigfoot's kind of a big deal. He is a good example of a cryptid, an animal that some people believe exists, that science cannot find, document, or prove yet, which tonight we're going to suspend our disbelief, right? Because it's spooky season. So I like to believe he's out there somewhere, even though you would have to have like a population of at least 500 to have a healthy breeding group. And that would make you think you would see one occasionally, especially with all the game cameras that are out there and cell phones. But we're putting that aside because I want to believe Bigfoot's out there. I want to believe cryptids are out there. And for our purposes, we're going to start with a very famous Ozark cryptid known as the Ozark Howler. Have any of you guys ever heard of the Ozark Howler? This dude is supposed to be like the size of a small cow, extremely shaggy, dark black hair or dark green hair, have like grotesque horns on its head, inhabit the hollers of the Ozark Mountains, which, listen, if you guys ever get out and explore, if you've ever been into the hollers of any mountains anywhere, not just the Ozark Mountains or the Appalachians, there's a reason so many creepy stories and legends pervade those hollers, because even in broad daylight, when you're deep in one of those hollers, it does almost have a supernatural feeling, an otherworldly feeling. You guys might remember from one of my episodes I did a long time ago called Sacred Spaces. In a very real way, a lot of these spaces, this is something I talked about today with those two podcasters up there in Fayetteville. Places sometimes seem like they have a memory. When you get way back in the woods, you find certain places it feels like it remembers something, and you're just like, God, I'd really love to know what this place remembers. It just has that vibe. It feels sacred. These hollers can have that kind of feel, and when it's dark and you're down in those hollows, it can feel very, very creepy, and you don't know what exists up above that ridge line watching you, right? These places are ample breeding grounds for these kinds of stories. So, the Ozark Howler, monstrous beast. His howl is right in his name. It's one of his most, I guess, prevalent features, and apparently it is very deep. It's very guttural. It's apparently like bone-chilling, terrifying if you were to hear it. And this guy roams around, or gal. I guess there's got to be a guy and a gal, right? Because how would it keep propagating for the last couple of 100 years? So I'm assuming there's more than one. So, all right, this critter, whatever its gender is, doesn't matter, is rolling around in the Ozarks, and to see one, some say, is to portend your death. What's really interesting about the Ozark Howler, there's been a resurgence and stuff coming up about the Ozark Howler in recent years. And even back, I think it's been 6 or 7 years ago now, somebody sent a picture to a local news station, one of our local news stations, purported to be the Ozark Howler. A glance at it, it makes me very sad that they didn't do a better job. If they were going to come up with something to try to hoax the news station with, they could have at least came up with something creepy. It's a German Shepherd puppy with like pronghorn antelope horns photoshopped onto its head. And you can even tell by the tree it's standing next to that it's a puppy. Like, it's tiny, and it's so sad. It makes me sad that they couldn't have come up with something terrifying, which I know this was before AI was prolific, but Photoshop has been a thing for a long time, and it makes me sad we couldn't do any better than that. But if you see that image, just know that's a German Shepherd puppy with some kind of horns that look like pronghorn antelope horns. just kind of copied and pasted onto its head. But the stories themselves persist, and there has been an increase in sightings in the last few years. The interesting thing about the Ozark howler is it's supposedly one of the first times it was ever seen was by Daniel Boone himself. Old Danny Boone was on a hunting party into the Missouri Ozarks, and he supposedly wrote a letter to his sister-in-law living back in Kentucky after this hunting trip. And it was somewhere near what is now Cuba, Missouri, which is a little bit more in the central eastish part of the state. You're on your way to St. Louis when you come across Cuba. So Boone supposedly writes a letter to his sister, and in this letter he writes supposedly with really terrible phonetic spelling. I'm not going to actually read it the way it's recorded, because I just did that, and thank God for editing and this not being live. I'm not gonna do that. That was terrible. So essentially what it says is, at the end of a letter he wrote back to his sister-in-law in Kentucky, he says, "I leave you with an alarming story of a black creature I found and wounded on the Sutter Creek. Black and swarthy, with horns on its scalp. Ignorant of its name, I am told of the sound it makes, with a terrible howling in the night. Warnings of this for settlers should be passed along. Your humble servant, Daniel Boone." Okay, unfortunate thing here about, and according to another tale, he supposedly killed one several years later when he was over 80 while on a hunting trip near on the Platte River, which is not in Missouri or Arkansas Ozarks, but supposedly the same creature. Here's the thing. Unfortunately, even though we're suspending disbelief tonight, I have to tell you, as a historian, this letter from Daniel Boone has never been found. It does not exist anywhere in any archive that anyone can find, and lots of his letters are in archives. And also a historian and a linguist has actually looked at this supposed spelling and lettering, which we can't even really find the original source for. And he's like, this doesn't, yeah, he was literate. He spelled with a little bit of old English, whatever, but this doesn't even remotely match the way that Boone wrote. And so the letter itself, probably apocryphal, unfortunately, but the legend of the Ozark howler has been around for a very, very long time. And I want to tell you guys, like, it's very interesting that the Ozark howler is a very specific cryptid. It doesn't really show up anywhere else, and it shows up primarily in the Arkansas and Missouri Ozarks. And it has similarities to only one, really, I guess you could call it a group of other creatures, but really it's more likely just one creature through multiple cultural lenses over in Europe, known as the Kushi, which I'm not going to tell you how you can, well, to spell it, it's like Cudhsidhe, and it's kind of Gaelic in origin, but you pronounce it Kushi. And anyway, the Kushi is a mythological hound that is feared as a harbinger of death. The settlers believe this hound would come to bear away the soul of a person to the afterlife, much like the Grim Reaper would. The hounds of death went by other names over there in Europe, such as the Bean She, which is the Irish version, the Kushi, which is the Scottish, like we were just talking about, and the Coon Anún, which is the Welsh version. And according to this folklore, the Kushi is said to be the size of a young bull, which is about the size of a small bear. I don't know. It's said to have the appearance of a wolf, shaggy hair, and it's usually cited as being dark green or black. Occasionally it could be white. Its tail is described as being long and either coiled. Its paws are described as the width of a man's hand. It makes its home in the clefts in the rocks of the Scottish Highlands and all the highlands that are in Europe. And for context, the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh, they're all closely related. This is all a part of those ancient kind of Gallic tribes as the farther back you go. In this legend, the creature is capable of hunting silently. It'll occasionally let out 3 terrifying bays. It's got a amazing howl, and it can be heard for miles. Those who hear the baying of the Kushi must reach safety by the 3rd bark, or they'll be overcome with terror to the point of death. This is also thought to be a warning to lock up the nursing women, lest the beasts abduct them and take them to a fairy mound, where they would supply milk for the children of the Fae. The hunting grounds of the Coon Anún are said to include the mountains of Western Europe, where it's believed that the howling of these huge dogs foretold the death of anyone who heard them. According to the Welsh folklore, their growling is loudest when they are at a distance, and as they draw nearer, it grows softer and softer. That's terrifying. And their coming is so generally seen as a portent of death. So, do you guys notice any very distinct similarities? The only thing missing in the European version is the horns, okay? Everything else is an exact match, which is interesting because the primary groups of settlers to the Ozarks in the very earliest days. I mean, this first story that came from Daniel Boone supposedly is supposed to be in 1817, right? This is when our earliest settlers really start to make it into the Ozarks. And primarily they are of Scots-Irish background, Welsh background, and also there's some German in there. My background is primarily Scots, Irish, and Welsh. Like, that's kind of how I got tied into doing the Ozark Mountain folklore folk magic program that I did. So it does not surprise me, and you'll notice the trend here. Like, those Scottish Highlanders and all those folks that lived up in the high country of Europe, they migrated to America, and they initially settled in the Appalachians. They worked their way down the Alps, and then with the Louisiana Purchase, they came to the Ozarks. They like the high country. They like the valleys. They like the mountains and the hollers. And their folklore, I do believe, came with them. And just because we call it folklore does not mean that these aren't really some form of something that follows around this very particular ethnic group of people. I personally am of the mind that I like to believe that there's at least some amount of possibility that there are magical, wonderful things in this world that we just do not have the scientific capacity to measure or record just yet. So, when you come to the Ozark Mountains on an adventure, should you find yourself in any of our great national forests throughout the Ozarks, in Arkansas or Missouri, keep your eyes peeled and your ears open for the Ozark howler, because you never know what you might run across out there. And listen, I will attest to that. I have not had the good fortune, or the bad fortune, as it were, with the Ozark howler, but I've run up on some other weird stuff that you guys can go back and listen to any of our spooky season episodes over the last 5 years. I've told all my tales, right? We're going to touch back on just a couple of them tonight for tonight's episode. I tell my tales. I don't care if people like it or not. I know what I've come up against out there. So I like to believe there's something out there that maybe we just can't quite quantify or qualify just yet. So come to the Ozarks, make yourself a legend trip, and come a hunting for the Ozark howler. And as long as we're on cryptids, you know what? We have another really, really famous cryptid in Arkansas known as the Fouke monster. It's named after the small town of Fouke, Arkansas. I actually went looking for the Fouke monster for an episode on The Fringe some 17 years ago. We've probably talked about this a little bit, but never at length on this show that I can remember. So tonight I'm going to tell you the story of the Fouke monster, because you can still go down into the Ouachita Mountains. You can get you a place to stay, an Airbnb, a cabin in the woods, or just there's national forest everywhere. Dispersed camping, baby. Go put up a hammock. If you're feeling particularly gutsy, go out there and put up a hammock and try to call the Fouke monster in. See if he'll come say hi. Maybe he'll snuggle up in your hammock with you. That would keep you warm. Though I'm told it smells really bad, so that may not be what you want to do there. But we are going to go ahead and talk about the Fouke monster tonight. And I'm going to read this little bit of an article because it's way easier. It's going to line it out for you. This is the first big sighting of the Fouke monster, the one that really set off. This story actually became the impetus for the movie in 1970. I forget what year it was released, but it was The Legend of Boggy Creek. And it's like a cult classic of horror films from back in that day and that genre. And it was based on basically this story. So, the Fouke monster first made local headlines in 1971 when it was reported to have attacked the home of Bobby and Elizabeth Ford on May 2nd, 1971. According to Elizabeth, the creature, which she initially thought was a bear, reached through a screen window that night while she was sleeping on a couch. It was chased away by her husband and his brother Don. During the alleged encounter, the Fords fired several gunshots at the creature and believed that they had hit it, though no traces of blood were ever found. An extensive search of the area failed to locate the creature, but 3-toed footprints were found close to the house, as well as scratch marks on the porch and damage to a window in the house's siding. According to the Fords, they had heard something moving outside late at night several nights prior, but having lived in the house for less than a week, they had never encountered the creature before. This creature was allegedly sighted once again on May 23rd when 3 people, D.C. Woods Jr., Wilma Woods, and Miss R.H. Sedgas, reported seeing an ape-like creature crossing U.S. Highway 71. More sightings and reports were made over the following months by local residents and tourists who found additional footprints. The best-known footprints were found in a soybean field belonging to a local filling station owner named Scott Keith. They were scrutinized by a game warden who was unable to confirm their authenticity. Like the Ford prints, they appeared to indicate that the creature only had 3 toes, which to me, that's actually fascinating because of other things that I've been researching here lately, just out of sheer curiosity. Any of you out there that are into this kind of stuff, you might be like, oh, wait, what? 3 toes? That's interesting. It is, isn't it? Well, the Fouke monster. You can go and you can look for the Fouke monster yourself if you like, or perhaps his or her offspring and descendants down in Fouke, Arkansas. It is national forest. It's a nice drive down 71 South. And, when we went down there, we didn't have a lot of luck. We went down there as the On the Fringe crew a billion years ago. We tried to interview locals. They weren't very interested. And we did find out, which was such a weird turn of events, that the woman that they said we needed to talk to had died in a freak accident like 2 or 3 weeks before we were there. And I mean an absolutely freak accident. She wasn't even driving. She was sitting at an intersection. It was a terrible story. Like that's one of those things that's like, Jesus, that's horrifying. And so the one person that we really could have interviewed to talk to had unfortunately perished, God rest her soul. And so we were left with basically just going out to look for Fouke monster on our own. And we did that, and we did not find him. We didn't find much of anything that night. And you could go and find, I don't know if it even still exists out there, but the episodes we had online of that particular episode, the ratings were pretty poor. They were pretty critical. Like, this is just a bunch of guys walking around in the woods talking. It's like, well, listen, Karen. Sometimes this is a documentary, not a docudrama. Stuff doesn't always happen. I'm sorry. Ghost hunters might make you think something's always happening, but that's because they're faking a lot of it, right? Listen, I'm telling you from someone who was in that industry, a lot of it is set up because you get people not watching because they're grumpy that people are just walking around talking. I know firsthand. But it was an interesting episode to explore, and we never did come up with the Fouke monster that day, but the legend persists and carries on. And should you want to go try to find the Fouke monster, you could do a lot more boring things with your time. Like at the end of the day, if you don't find Fouke monster, the only thing that happens for you is much like it did us. You got to spend, a night out in the woods. Maybe you go out there and you get to spend a nice camping trip with your family. At the end of the day, you're still exploring. You're still off your butt. You're still not sitting on a couch, and you're out experiencing your world, looking into something really, really interesting. Go out and try to find the Fouke monster. Fouke is located in kind of far southwest Arkansas. So where have we been so far? Well, we've been in the Ozarks. So all through the northern part of the state, we have the Ozark holler to look for. Down in southeast Arkansas, we have the Fouke monster. But what about other parts of the state? Well, apparently, and this one's interesting. I love this. When the skeptics tear apart these other things with the Ozark holler, like there is no letter from Danny Boone. Yeah, that's true. There is not one. Fouke monster wasn't reported before 71, and it coincided with this guy doing this thing. And it's like, yeah, okay. So like skeptical is a good thing. Skeptical is a good thing. Like I'd like to believe in stuff, but I'm a skeptical believer, right? But this next story I'm going to tell you, I've never come across until I was researching today for the Fouke monster for me to talk about it tonight, just so I could refresh myself. And I was like, ooh, what is this? Never heard of this one. I love this because this one does have recorded, it is in the records of history as far back as the 1850s. So, the Arkansas wild man. Let's go on a journey. Let's go back up 71. Let's hit Interstate 40 and let's head east to the other side of the state, Crowley's Ridge. Early settlers of the South reported encounters with a strange Sasquatch-like monster long before the first recorded sightings in Washington and Oregon. As they pushed their settlements deep into the woods and their hunts even deeper, the early frontiers people of the South often ran up against mysteries that defied explanation. One of the most bizarre involved a series of events surrounding a creature called the Wild Man by newspapers of the 1840s. This is from a website, by the way. I'm just giving you this outline from a website called the Sasquatch Chronicles. Want to give them full credit for this. They did the research. The earliest known recorded sightings took place in February and March of 1846 in the Crowley's Ridge area of eastern Arkansas. Stories about the creature's appearance were carried in newspapers across the nation, with the Baltimore Sun reporting on March 13, 1846, that his tracks measured 22 inches. His toes are as long as a common man's fingers, and in height and make he is double the usual size. Other reports followed, with a second surge of news coverage taking place in 1851. The New Hampshire Patriot and State Gazette reported on May 29th of that year that an expedition was about to leave Memphis to hunt for the Wild Man. The monster was said to be of gigantic size and covered with hair. The same newspaper followed with a page 1 account on June 5th, quoting the Memphis Inquirer as its source for a report that included the Wild Man having been seen chasing a herd of cattle. He was of gigantic stature, the body being covered with hair, and the head with long locks that fairly enveloped his neck and shoulders. The Wild Man, after looking at them deliberately for a short time, turned and ran away with great speed, leaping from 12 to 14 feet at a time. The Enquirer account noted that the monster had been seen in St. Francis, Greene, and Poinsett counties for 17 years, a statement that indicates that now lost reports may have been made as early as 1834. Colonel David C. Cross and Dr. Sullivan of Memphis were said to be organizing an expedition to search for the creature. This may well have been the first Bigfoot hunt in American history. No written details of their results or their search have yet been found, but certainly could exist. Another round of accounts appeared in the nation's newspapers in 1856. On January 3rd of this year, the Pittsfield Sun reported a wild man, 7 feet high, is stated to be roaming through the great Mississippi bottom in Arkansas. Numerous travelers and hunters have asserted that they have seen him, but none have been able to get near enough to give particulars concerning this strange being. Not all accounts, however, were from the swamps of eastern Arkansas. A fairly bizarre report appeared in May of 1856, reporting a sighting in April on the Upper Red River, and noting that the creature had also been seen in northern Louisiana. So, Arkansas wild man being reported in papers by early pioneers as early as the 1840s, with purported claims that it had been seen for the prior 17 years, indicating there may have been other reports that we've just lost in the history books. This is fascinating to me. I had not heard of the Arkansas wild man, and this is kind of what I do. Well, in a way, folklore is a part of what I do. So this is really fascinating. So should you want to go hunting for Bigfoot, you can also do it in the eastern half of the state. I don't know that I want to go look for Bigfoot. We did it a couple of times, and I'll be honest with you guys, if you go back and listen to previous spooky season episodes, in years past, I did talk about an encounter we had with something down deep in the mountains when we were looking for the Choctaw little people, the Coney Anacostia, or the Bopoli, or the Cowie Anacostia. There's so many ways to pronounce the one. And there's two different versions. The Bopoli is another. And we ran up against stuff that, upon further inspection, we thought was what had to do with them. And it was objectively occurring to us. What we experienced actually coincides with what people report as being running into Bigfoot. And I'm like, what the hell was going on down there? Like, that was one of the weirdest nights of my life. And so, you know what? A good way to bring this around before the halfway point of the episode is to say, listen, if you go out looking for something, if you stare long into the void, as Nietzsche said, do not be surprised if it turns and it stares back at you. You remember the Mothman prophecies? It's like, you notice them, and they noticed you noticing them. That's eerie. So just be careful if you want to go looking. And, just know that if you go hiking, camping out in these mountains, there's weird stuff that can happen out there that might just be totally normal. But it certainly becomes a legend very quickly. But then there's also other weird stuff, like I told you about last year, I think, where in a little bit of individualistic teenage debauchery, we might have stole a sign from in front of a convenience store in the middle of the night and then tried to dispose of the evidence in a creek that was only 6 inches deep, only to hear that sign drug away in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, with no one else in the woods with us in any of the spots. We were really in one of the only spots to camp out there, and we never found it. Ever. We searched the creek, we searched the water, we searched everywhere. It literally was drug away in the middle of the night by something apparently with opposable thumbs, because A, it was heavy. You'd have to be strong and you'd have to be able to grip it to get it the hell out of there. Just can't see a bear coming along, a black bear of any size, and being like, oh, that would look great in my man cave. The odds of that seem very, very slim. So weird stuff happens, especially if you're a weird person like me. So anyway, we've come up on 30 minutes for the first half of tonight's spooky season 2025 episode. So we have so far the Ozark Howler, the Falk Monster, and the Arkansas Wildman. We've covered 3 corners of the state. When we come back from the break, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to get into some of our famous spooklights. We're going to get into at least one haunted bridge, one haunted hotel, and we'll see what we can do to give you guys a chill tonight, and maybe give you some good ideas to get out on some legend trips of your own. Stick around and we'll get to that after the break. What is up, all of you wayward souls? I want to tell you guys about our newest sponsor, Vendetti Optics, a brand based right here in the good old US of A, Portland, Oregon, to be exact. And I bought my first pair of Vendetti sunglasses about a year and a half ago and fell in love with them, so much so that I got online and ordered a couple of more pair. And when I did, there was a small shipping snafu, an order fulfillment snafu, and I got on the phone, gave them a call, and guess what? I get a call back from who? One of the big men themselves, right there in Portland, from the top of the chain. Have a great conversation, and we end up starting this great relationship we have. They more than made right the little snafu that occurred, and I am now a huge proponent of them because I can tell you from personal experience they are good people, and they're trying to compete with the big boys out there, coming in at a price point of about $40, but using the exact same frame material, TR90, and the same polarization process as the big guys. As it turns out, something I think we are already probably knew in our hearts, when you buy big name sunglasses, you're buying a big name, not necessarily any more quality than you can get somewhere else, like at Vendetti Optics. They have 29 different styles. They have multiple polarization options for whatever climate you happen to live in. And they back it up with like this lifetime guarantee that if your dog eats your sunglasses, it doesn't matter how you break them, send it back in with a check to cover shipping and handling, and you're golden. You got a new pair on the way. These guys are truly trying to do it right, and they have this philosophy that a really good pair of sunglasses should not cost you so much that you are afraid to wear them. And I think all of us outdoorsmen can relate to that. So if you guys, like me, are very practical and like to get more bang for your buck and wear some great looking sunglasses, check out VendettiOptics.com. That's BENDETTI optics.com, or you can go over to Instagram /Vendetti Optics. And that I highly suggest, whether you buy a pair or not, just to check out the cutest pupper you will ever see modeling sunglasses. Once again, that's VendettiOptics.com, and make sure and let them know Wayward Story sent you. And welcome back. Thank you guys for sticking around through our sponsor break. So we have went all over the state so far with just 3 stories. Now we're going to get into some spooklights. We're going to change gears, shift gears from cryptids, and we're going to move our way into spooklights. And we have a plenty in this state. I want to start with the Dover spooklights. Okay, or the Dover spooklight, because I investigated this light myself with our film crew that you've heard me talk about many, years past in different episodes, on the Fringe. This is going to take a minute to tell, because I want to tell you some of the folkloric backstory, because it's a good one. And then I'll tell you a little bit about our experience with it. But the main thing is, if I did mention this in previous episodes in years past. Go back, listen to our spooky season episode. You'll catch it in there somewhere. But for tonight's telling, we found that damn light. We got 6 hours of tape of it. You can still go onto YouTube right now if you look up Possum Valley Entertainment, which is my production company, or maybe it's on the Fringe YouTube. But either way, Possum Valley Entertainment, on the Fringe, Dover Spooklights. You will find a video that's got, I don't know, last time I looked, it was pushing in on like 30,000 views. I was like, wow, I wish we had gone that viral while we were making the show. Maybe we'd still be making shows like that, because bankruptcy is a thing. But anyway, of the 13 episodes or so that we shot, I think we shot and got out 12 or 11. And then the 12th or the 13th we shot, but we never had the money to get edited and everything kind of fell apart. But this was one of the episodes that we got legitimate footage of something that was reported to be somewhere. The Dover light is there. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Like, I will stand here and stand on that hill. I will die on that hill. What is it? I don't know. We did everything we could to debunk it. We could not find any way that someone could have been down. It's not like it was just that easy. Like, oh, someone lives down there and they're on their porch and they see the headlights on the overlook ahead and they're like, Martha, get the spotlight. Let's mess with some people. That's not possible. There's no one that lives there. We went through all that in the episode. And I'm telling you now, in a shortened form, we debunked the heck out of it. And there's nothing. Like, we tried to debunk the heck out of it. And there was like really no way. It didn't make any sense that someone or whatever could just be down there to mess with people. So there's really a light there, that it's not an electric light, that does not come from power or electricity because there are no lines there. There's nothing there. So anyway, this light's real. And if you want to go check out the Dover Spook Light on your legend tripping, super easy. It's north of Russellville, which is off of Interstate 40. You drive right up to the overlook where you can see it. You can find all of this information online. And I'm here to tell you the Dover light is real. Whatever it is, it was there for us. And it is reported as being really, really regular. It's seen by most people that go there. So that might be a good one for you to check out. But what I want to tell you about is this like quick story here, sidetrack, even though it's not really a sidetrack. Apparently, this writer named Johnny Sane picked up what we did in 2011, 2 years later, and wrote an entire article about it in the About River Valley magazine, which is now defunct just since the last 2 years or so. No one ever contacted us, oddly enough, but he certainly used our cover art for our DVD that's like sitting on my shelf right now, and you can still go get on Amazon. He sure as hell used our cover art without permission, and he sure as hell wrote a really actually good article. Like, kudos to him. He wrote a good article, and he quoted me from the episode specifically. Like, without my consent, without asking. It would have just been nice to know about it, right? Plagiarism, like integrity and journalism, something. Like, he gave us credit. At least he used my name, and he even spelled it right, which is better than most people do. He gave us credit, but it's like, I would have loved to have had a hard copy of this magazine to show my daughter, for God's sakes. And now they're defunct. I can't even be like, do you have back issues? What the hell? That's insane to me, but it is a good article. And he quoted us again extensively and did give us credit. It's just would have been nice to know about it. But since they plagiarized us, I'm going to plagiarize them in his article to give you the actual legends that are the supposed origins of this light in the Dover Lights. On a lonely stretch of dirt road north of Dover in Pope County, a legend has remained since some time in the 1800s. In this age of discovery, it would seem that technology would eclipse any haunting folklore, but somehow the sightings and the stories survive. The Dover Lights are a phenomenon that even to this day remains a mystery. The legend stretches back to a period before electricity, a fact that seems to fly in the face of the skeptics' claims. While the lights themselves are baffling, part of the mystery is deciding which story regarding their origins is the true story. Many believe there was a coal mine on the hillside and that the mine collapsed one day, killing several miners. The lights wandering the hill are said to be the spectral light resembling the carbide lanterns used by the miners to illuminate the mine while they worked. Another popular story tells of the Spanish conquistadors searching for gold in the hills. While it's apparent that searching for gold was what conquistadors loved to do most, large deposits of gold were never found in the Arkansas Ozarks. Maybe that's why the Spaniards are supposedly still looking. Another legend, perhaps the best, most detailed story, and I'll give you this one in a nutshell. There's supposedly found silver mine in this valley, big piney river, Big Piney Creek, and started mining it. Ended up with a bunch of silver, and then someone local noticed that he had money and means that he shouldn't have. Happened to be a doctor, and the doctor had occasion to go out there one evening to check on the wife, who was apparently gravely ill. And he came to the knowledge of this silver by one means or another, and he stole a little bit of it. And he went back the next day to try to get the rest of it. And bad things ensued. And now, to this day, apparently, these lights are that of the doctor looking for the rest of the gold. Or, conversely, it could be this departed spirits of the old man and the old woman that lived down in the valley trying to find their gold and retrieve it from this thieving doctor. So anyway, these are the primary legends for why those lights exist. What's the truth? No idea. But I can tell you from experience, those lights are really there. And if you go find our old YouTube video, you'll actually get to see them a little bit. It's terrible quality because it's compressed YouTube version. I've still got source copies, the data files from that in my fire safe. And it's really clear. Like when you're running it straight into the computer, straight to a TV screen, they're really clear. They're really sharp. That light was fascinating. It was there for 2 solid hours. We ran 3 cameras for 2 hours, equaling 6 hours of footage. We all saw it, and we have it on tape. So the Dover light, my mouth to your earbox, it's real. And I promise you, whatever it is, it was there. Even if it is some kind of a hoax, it's there and really fun to go see. And you can find all the information for finding the overlook to see and view the valley where the Dover spooklight appears online. It's easy enough to do. So the Dover spooklight, authentic to some degree because I saw it with my own eyes. Now, let's talk about a couple of more spook lights, shall we? The Crosset light and the Gurdon light. You can Google these. You'll find plenty of information on these, on how to find them. Gurdon is, I think, about 45 minutes or so south of Little Rock on the old, I believe, Missouri Pacific line, the Gurdon branch of the Missouri Pacific line. Both the Crosset and the Gurdon light are the classic tale of the brakeman or someone hit by the train, losing their head, and they're walking the railroad tracks with a lantern. Both of these have been reported by several people. As a matter of fact, Unsolved Mysteries, not the new version, the old school one for the OGs that like sent so many people down the path of being, essentially weirdos like me in their adulthood, went and explored and did an investigation of the Gurdon lights. You can go online right now and find that old episode of Unsolved Mysteries where they explored it. It's very, very cool. You should check that out. But Gurdon light, Crosset light. Go online, find the information, and make it a part of your road trip. As a matter of fact, the Gurdon light, that might be a good one to do. Dover's north of Russellville, Gurdon's south of Little Rock, but they're within, I would say, a couple of hours drive of each other. Maybe not something to do in the same night, but on consecutive nights. Let's say you're making an Arkansas spooky season road trip sometime in the future. So Crosset light and Gurdon light, and they all have that same tale. Like I said, usually it's a railroad brakeman, which I think is interesting. My grandfather was a railroad brakeman. He never fell off a train and had his head cut off, and he doesn't haunt any tracks that I'm aware of. Anyway, with his old railroad lantern looking for his nearly dearly departed head. Though according to my mother before she died, I don't think it would have been unwelcome had that been the case. But, things are what they are. This legend persists, not just here in Arkansas with Gurdon and Crosset, but it persists around the country. This is one of those kind of migrational urban legends that it makes its appearance just like a crybaby bridge in every small community, in every town, everywhere. This is an avenue I want to look into someday for understanding why these specific archetypes of stories pervade. I think that would be very telling from a kind of ethnographical, kind of a cultural anthropology, kind of a culturally themed, lensed approach to the subject. Why do these archetypes keep showing up? I mean, psychologists, they can tell us about why do we create monsters? Why do we love monsters? Why do we love horror films? Because we're scared, basically. We create monsters because we basically project out our own internal either insecurities, whether it's we're scared of the world, scared of what's going on in society at this moment, whatever it is, we project it onto something because we need to personify it outside of ourselves. So if it's over there, we can hide from it. we could defend ourselves from it. We could maybe get away from it. And it even gives us an ample playground to go through scenarios in our mind. This comes from like the zombie apocalypse craze that went around for a while with video games and TV. It's like, who hasn't sat on their couch in the middle of the night one night looking around going, yeah, I could barricade this place. Yep, I could barricade these doors. You know what? I probably need to get a couple of crates of water. But other than that, I mean, I've got a 6-month supply of Pop-Tarts in the fridge right now. You know, we go through, it gives us a safe space to work through catastrophic scenarios safely and things that we're scared of safely. And so it's kind of a natural psychological thing to create monsters and scary situations to give us a space to basically do preventative maintenance and work through how would I survive if I needed to. That's one angle on it. That's one theory. That's really a pretty dang valid theory, I think. But specific archetypes continue to show up, like the crybaby bridges. Why? Why a crybaby bridge? Why is it a baby crying? Why does it have to be a bridge? Bridges are liminal spaces. That's a fascinating thought. But why crying babies and why bridges? Why railroads and brakemen with no heads and swinging lanterns? What's the no head thing anyway? Because you got the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, right? There's headless horsemen everywhere. Even in Vance Randolph's book, Ozark Superstitions, which I think is now Ozark Magic and Folklore, what I built my entire program off of, he's got headless horseman stories in his ghost stories chapter within that book. What is with the headless thing? I want to look into this. But for our purposes tonight, road trip, legend trip, Google it. Crosset lights and the Gurdon lights. Both famous spook lights in Arkansas. A third one would be the Hornet spook light, which is actually belongs more properly to Oklahoma and Missouri, but it's right at the tri-state region. So it's like Oklahoma, Missouri. It's in the Ozarks. It's not an Arkansas one, but it's in the Ozarks, and it's real close. You can make that trip pretty darn easily from Arkansas. I know tonight we're about Ozark haunts or haints, Ozark haints, but this one qualifies. This one totally qualifies. Look into this one too. This one's extremely famous. It's in Randolph's book as well. It's not just regionally famous, it's nationally famous. We went on the Fringe crew and we experienced it as well. And at first we were extremely excited about it. We got another spook light. Are you kidding me? We had it on tape and everything until we realized that a car came and chased it off. And then we were like, dude, it's just like the reports online. I saw the light. I was looking straight down the road where it appears. And a couple of minutes later, a car showed up and chased it off. I was so mad. Yeah, I've told this story on the show before. We recreated it multiple times with our own car. So that light on that road in particular, there is at least one explanation of it being cars coming, and it would have to do with atmospheric inversions of temperatures, possibly gases in the air hanging down in that valley or fog hanging in that valley. But that doesn't explain all the reports of it that were pre-automobile and pre-highway, and they do exist. So there is something going on in that valley that has something to do with our perceptions of what we see out there, and that light is far older than cars. So the Hornet spook light deserves a mention, and it's a great one to go explore because you're real close to Joplin. You can stay in Joplin, you can eat the great food in Joplin, and so to tie this back into the Wayward Stories podcast, we're about exploring the world, finding ourselves, getting out there and doing life as opposed to sitting around thinking about it, or worse, not thinking about it. The Hornet Spooklight is a great one because Joplin's a cool place to kick it for a weekend anyway. And you can go out and try to find you a spooky light. And guess what? You're probably going to see that light, even if it does just so happen to be a car coming down that road just over the horizon. Let's go ahead and talk about the Crescent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel is a great one. We talked about it last year at this time, I believe. I told you guys my story of my ghost picture. I still have that picture. I shared it around this time last year on my Instagram, waywardson119, if you'd like to go find it. You don't have to scroll back too far. I haven't been doing a lot of posting on Instagram. And you can see the picture I took that there apparently was a young lady in very Victorian garb in reflection in a window right in front of me, and I did everything I possibly could to debunk that. There was no one in our group, there were no pictures on the wall, but I got a picture of a ghost girl. And it's interesting because it fits the time frame that there was a girls finishing school in the Crescent Hotel. It had been a hotel for a while, and then it became a girls finishing school before it became the famous Dr. Norman Baker's health resort, where it was a cancer curable hospital, where he was just doing quackery and people were dying and he was getting rich off of that. But the Crescent is famously haunted. Ghost Hunters has been there for goodness sakes. Like that back in the day when Ghost Hunters was huge in its early days, it went to the Crescent Hotel. And they got some really interesting results there. But let me tell you the story of the Crescent. Now, I can tell you that the Crescent was built in 1886, and it was built by the Frisco Railroad because they had extended a line into Eureka Springs, because Eureka Springs, Arkansas is a beautiful little town. People call it the what is it, the little Switzerland of Arkansas. It's a beautiful, beautiful town built in this very steep ravine in the Ozark Mountains, and there's all these natural springs there, and they were thought to have healing properties. So people from time immemorial, all the way back into indigenous peoples in the area, would go there for healing. And what's interesting to me about the indigenous peoples aspect is look at them be decent humans. Even tribes that the peoples that controlled the springs, the area the springs were in, even when they were at war with other tribes and tribal entities, the springs were basically a non-militarized zone. Anyone was allowed to come to the spring, even if the two groups of people were at odds with each other. Isn't that an interesting concept? How novel. Be human. Be human. Be decent to other people. But then European settlers came into the picture, saw a chance to capitalize and make a lot of money, and they took the springs, they converted them into a healing resort. The Frisco Railroad builds a line to get tourists down to there. All these hotels go up everywhere, and the Crescent Hotel is one of those. It's very old. It's a really cool stay. I had the opportunity to stay there. We talked about that in a previous episode. If you would like to go listen and hear about it, it's called A Weekend at the Historic Crescent Hotel from a couple of years ago back in our feed. But the stories of ghosts at the Crescent, and they do lean heavily into this. They don't hide from their spooky heritage. The ghost of former owner Dr. Norman Baker, who turned the hotel into a health resort in 1937, is said to wander around the old recreation room by foot of the stairs leading to the first floor. I love how they say, turned it into a health resort. It was a cancer curable hospital. He was a quack. A lot of people died, and he basically was a charlatan, made a bunch of money off of poor people. I mean, there's nothing more despicable, right, than taking dying people's money by making them believe that they could be healed. That's dirty, dirty business. And there was work done, an archaeological excavation done after a gardener dug into a garden a couple of years ago and found lots of body parts and things like tissue samples in sealed mason jars that had apparently been the dump outside the hospital, and a lot of those are now on display in the basement of the Crescent and a part of the ghost tour, because they have a ghost tour. But Norman Baker was despicable. He was a charlatan, and he was fleecing dying people. Like, you need to know that. He was a dirtbag. Other haunts in the hotel, which maybe adds to how haunted that place might be, because that's messed up, y'all. In July 1987, a woman reported having seen a ghost of a nurse pushing a gurney down a hallway in the middle of the night, which would track with the cancer curable hospital aspect of things. Another ghost believed to haunt the Crescent Hotel is a man named Michael, who died during the hotel's initial construction. Sources disagree on whether he is Swedish or Irish. Another ghost, usually seen in the lobby or bar, whose identity is unknown, is described as being a dignified, bearded man in formal clothing. And then there's a ghost named Theodora, a cancer patient of Dr. Baker, and is said to haunt room 419. And I remember the 419 thing. That's a big part of the ghost tour. And so she is said to haunt that room. And often people report seeing ghosts in room 414 and also 218. It is uncertain when these ghost stories began, but reports of ghost sightings have increased dramatically in the 1990s and beyond. So the Crescent Hotel is supposedly very haunted. I will tell you from personal experience, I was taking pictures for a tourism article for NWA Tourism and ended up with a picture with a girl in Victorian garb in it. Like, it just is what it is. I wasn't trying to do that. I was taking the ghost tour for the magazine article. That's the context of how I got my ghost picture from the Crescent. And also, when I was staying there that night, I had some horrible night terrors, two of them in a row, and they were horrible. They were grotesque. I've had night terrors my entire life, but they have not been very prevalent in the last 10 years as I've gotten older or whatever. But that night, it had been several years since I'd had a single one, and I had two in the same night, and they were, I mean, they were brutal. They were brutal. And also, the next day, I came back into the room after it had been cleaned and everything was nice and tidy, and there was a single rose petal laying in the middle of the floor, oddly. And I was like, interesting. I wonder if this is the ghost girl that I took a picture of. Maybe she's sweet on me. That's kind of cool. But anyway, that's what happened to me at the Crescent Hotel. And Eureka Springs is just a really cool place anyway. It's an enormous place with more buildings on the National Registry of Historic Places. It's mind-blowing how many Victorian period buildings are still left in Eureka. If anywhere in the state of Arkansas is gonna be haunted, y'all, it's gonna be Eureka Springs. So if you're into it, you could stay at the Basin Park, which is 1905 is when it was built, and it's a very cool historic stay. The Crescent is a very cool historic stay, and both of them are reported to be very haunted. They both have fun touristy ghost tours, but you will get good historic information on those ghost tours. And then there's also the underground Eureka Springs tour, which takes you into Eureka Springs. Interesting story. Everything you see on the ground level today is actually the second floor of all those buildings, because the street kept washing down with mud and filling up the street with mud to the point they said to heck with it, and they just built the street up 10 feet and made the second floor of all those buildings the first floor. So many of the old storefronts that are even older than the ones you're seeing today are literally below your feet, and you can still access some of them, and they have a whole underground tour where you can see some of those things, and it's really, really cool. If anywhere in this state is going to be haunted, Eureka Springs, it's got as good a chance as anywhere. And so you should go and you should check out the Crescent, and you can go see if you can find my ghost and say hi to her. Tell her I miss her. Like, I don't want her to come here or anything, but I just mean I haven't been back up there in a while. And so I should probably do that at some point. Let's see, guys. I'm looking through my list here. I've kind of gone over most everything I wanted to talk about for the state of Arkansas, for our Ozark haints, or not Ozark, Arkansas haints. We've been all over the state, and I like it. I like what we've got here. I'll tell you what, let's wrap out tonight's episode, and let's just talk about things you can look for if you come exploring in our mountains, because the hollers they're deep, they're dark, and they can be exceptionally spooky. And if you're a very intrepid hiker, or especially a trekker, if you're willing to go off trail and explore down the valleys and up the creeks into these deep hollows, one of the things you'll find is some amazing grottos and waterfalls that may not even be marked on maps or known by anyone. That happens from time to time. But in these hollows, you'll also find places that feel so ancient and untouched that you feel that there's something more there, and that alone is a special experience. But a lot of times you'll find old homesteads down in these valleys. I think I've told this story before. The day that I found an old homestead on Hurricane Creek, I forget which direction from Shores Lake, in the middle of the mountains, and saw this old car hood, and in curiosity of how old the car hood was, because it looked like it was probably 1930s. It had that general shape, but it was upside down. I flipped the hood over, only to find that the hood was upside down for a reason. It was covering a rock-lined well that dropped straight down in a hole of water that, when I looked down, I had like immediate flashbacks to the Ring and Samara coming up out of that hole, crawling up the walls of that well. It was creepy as hell, y'all. But what I'm getting at is, you find these old homesteads way back in the hills. Something you can expect to know about what you found is there was witchcraft being practiced there. That's all what my article, or my recent program, is all about. What I interviewed with Ozarks Alive, it's all about that. That was a folkway that was a part of everyday life. It was basically like personal technology. Okay, you wake up today, you make your coffee, you check your phone for your email. Like back then, you woke up, you made sure the cedar pegs were still in the wall to make sure that the witch didn't come in last night. Like, that was a part of life. And those people weren't simple, and they weren't stupid. They had a different set of things that mattered to them and things that were important to them. And they lived at a time before technology and a lot of scientific inquiry. So somebody needed to explain why the cow was giving bloody milk, because I can't give the kids milk this morning. Someone needs to explain why the hen's not laying because we're starving over here. Somebody needs to explain why the cow died for no damn reason, right? There were things a part of the lore, a part of the life ways to explain those things. And there were ways to interact with nature that we would call witchcraft today. And in many ways are a form of folk magic, are a craft of a sort. They're rituals, they're incantations, they're things that people would utter and things that people would do to try to, here in the physical, to try to elicit a better outcome from a supernatural agent. But that's also not any different than going to church and praying, or praying the rosary, or showing up for, doing Lent, doing any of those things in the Catholic version. It's all spiritual traditions, right? And so when you go into these hollows, you go up, you may very well find yourself at an old homestead, an old foundation, an old rock well, and you can know that somewhere close to you, somebody was practicing some of these things right where you're standing. If the old house happens to still be standing, there's things you can look for. You can look for iron horseshoes over the door. Most people have heard of the horseshoe over the door for luck, but what people don't realize, especially amongst the Scots-Irish, which is a big part of our settlers, that iron had more to do with the fae and keeping the fae, the fairies, happy than it did with bringing luck, right? Or storing up luck or pouring it out. It had more to do because the fae are deterred by iron. And the fae are not inherently evil, but they are mischievous. And you don't want the fae, basically, again, like I said, you noticed them and they noticed you noticing them. You don't want them to notice you noticing them. You just want to throw up your iron around the door, and then maybe they won't come in the house, and maybe they won't take notice of you because you just want to fly under the radar because you don't want their attention. They're not inherently bad, but they will mess with you if you mess with them. That's often, too, if you're up in these hills, look for a fairy tree. There's no way to prove which lone trees in the middle of fields is a fairy tree, and which one is just a tree that the farmer was like, well, the cows get awful hot in August around here. I should probably leave that tree there so they have some shade. Like, there's no way to tell the difference. But a fairy tree is a single enormous tree in the middle of a field, and the reason, traditionally, many of those trees were left there is because the fae got pissed if you cut down all their trees, because they are little nature spirits, and they're about the trees. And you know what's instructive about the fae? There's something really valuable about the fae, if you ask me as a cultural anthropologist, blah, blah, blah. They're instructive. They didn't like it when you destroyed nature for your own benefit and your own profit. And I think we live in a world right now that could benefit a great deal, don't you? From a path, from a thought process, from a belief system that said we should probably live in some kind of harmony with our life support system, as opposed to subduing it, essentially killing it. We should probably live more in balance with nature. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So this fae, whether they're real or not, they're very instructive. So you can look for fairy trees. You can look for iron over doors of old homesteads. Here's a good one. Look for blue on the ceilings of porches. People still paint it blue to this day. Cobalt blue bottle trees. You will see those sometimes out in front of someone's house. That actually comes from enslaved African culture, the Gullah Geechee from the South Carolina Low Country. In African spiritual beliefs, spirits could not cross bodies of water, so you would paint the ceiling blue. And then it might fool the spirits into thinking they can't come in your house. And that's what the cobalt blue bottle trees are for as well. So if you keep your eyes open for that, you may just see vestiges into the modern day of our spiritual practices, our Ozark folk magic practice. There's so many more. Guys, there's dozens, hundreds of things that you could come across and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I found that. But I'm going to leave that to you. If you're very inquisitive, I suggest getting Ozark Magic and Folklore by Vance Randolph and reading about it. Because it's essentially a lot of the same stuff that was being practiced in the Appalachians and stuff that was being practiced in the Dutch country of Pennsylvania. This is a part of our heritage. As European Americans, it's a part of the heritage we have here. And it's really interesting, and you can still see bits and pieces of that in your everyday life. How many of you eat black-eyed peas on New Year's? Look that up. Hoppin' John, baby. It comes from a spiritual practice that's a couple of 100 years old. That's why we do it. So there's a lot of interesting things to find out here in the Ozark Hills, in the valleys of the Arkansas River, and the many rivers we have in this state, the Ouachita Mountains. We are rife with haints here in the state of Arkansas. And every single one of them would make a pretty darn cool legend trip for you guys to go and check out. So hopefully we were able to bring you some of those tonight. And hopefully you actually do take the time to go out and do some exploring and get busy living before you get busy dying. But with that, I think we've come to the end of tonight's show. I think it's time to wrap it up. So if you guys have enjoyed the show, thank you again so much. I appreciate you so deeply for coming and supporting the show, for listening. If you do enjoy it, please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Apple, Spotify, it doesn't matter. It means more than you can ever imagine to the algorithm. It's how people find us. So if you have a chance, please leave a rating and a review. Come over to waywardstories.com if you want to get in touch with me. There's a contact form there. You can do that just at mywaywardstory@gmail.com. But also you can hook up with me on Facebook, on Instagram, anywhere I've got something. It's all right there on that landing page. So come check out the website. And until next time, guys, get out there, go live, enjoy your spooky season, no matter how you celebrate it, enjoy it. And until we meet again, whenever that may be, you guys stay spooky for one thing, and don't forget to be good to each other.